Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Wayne Pennington, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great. You're running for Ivins City Council.
That's right.
All right. Congratulations. Is this your first run at political office of some kind?
Political office, yes.
Yeah.
I've been an officer in a number of professional and scientific societies. Campaigning for that's a lot different. You just put your curriculum vitae out there and people know your record and that's it.
Yeah. The engagement's probably a little bit higher. There's a certain crowd that always is there and
right.
They get educated to do it. So what were those positions?
Oh, one was I was president of the American Geosciences Institute. That's an umbrella organization covering about 50 professional and scientific geoscience societies, representing about 250,000 professionals.
Whoa. Okay. And where were you?
Well,
how did you get into
at that point? I was on the faculty at Michigan Technological University, Michigan Tech for short, and being active in professional societies and scientific societies is just one of the things that you do when you're a scientist like that.
It's almost like you have to, because it's...
If you don't, there's something missing in your career.
Yeah.
That's where you network, you find out new ideas, realize that, oh gosh, here's an example. Infrasound could be useful in monitoring glacial activity. Who knew? But you find that out when you're interacting with people doing infrasound for volcanic activity and so on. I don't want to get technical there, but that's where you learn these things in those societies.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because it's kind of the precursor to what I think we, at least the modern individual would look at as like co-working spaces and like incubators.
Right.
Technological incubators where you have a bunch of different businesses working on different things, but because they crash into each other, they realize, oh, you're working on this thing that could help me here. Yeah. And I didn't realize that. So it's like that first iteration of that innovation, right?
Exactly.
That's really interesting. So where'd you grow up? Where are you from? And then how'd you get to Southern Utah?
Spent my early childhood on a dairy farm outside of Rochester, Minnesota.
Okay.
When that could no longer support a family of 5, we moved to New York City, of all changes to have. My father became a technician in a photographic processing lab. We lived just across the river from Manhattan in New Jersey.
Okay.
And one could say I grew up there, and I went to school in New Jersey, high school and college. And after that, advanced degrees in New York State and then Wisconsin. In the meantime, I spent a year and a half in northern Pakistan, then University of Texas at Austin on the faculty there.
What'd you do in Pakistan? I got to stop you.
Earthquakes.
Okay.
Yeah, studying earthquakes. There was the world's largest earth-filled dam was being constructed on the Indus River, and in the area, other large reservoirs, water reservoirs, had caused earthquakes. And so the question was, would this dam and its reservoir also cause earthquakes right on the active seismic front of the Himalayan mountains?
Okay.
And it turns out it didn't. In fact, it decreased the frequency of earthquakes for a little while as it was filling up. Then it returned to the normal level after that.
And so, oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. So this is something to do with the weight of the water or
exactly
the shifting of the aquifer or something like that? Maybe?
Both of those things. You've got it. You sure you're not a geophysicist in disguise?
I don't know anything, but I am curious.
So the weight of the water, that's the first thing that the Earth's crust responds to. And in this case, the type of fault there basically got pinned by the additional weight on top of it. It wouldn't slide so much. That's why the earthquake activity decreased. Then as the water pressure increased at depth by percolating down and having weight on the water occupying the pore spaces, that allowed it to return to its normal level of activity.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So you did that for a little while, and then you went, where'd you go after that?
Then I worked at Columbia University for some time. Then I decided I wanted to have a PhD because the type of work that I wanted to do required a PhD to gain access to the things that the research grants, things like that. So I went to the University of Wisconsin for my PhD, finished that there pretty fast, found my wife. We've been married for 46 years, I think.
Let's call it 50.
It's close.
Yeah.
We're starting to plan the 50th. And then
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
That is no small feat, especially these days.
Well, I think it was a good match.
Yeah,
it worked out well.
Good.
Yeah. And then I went and worked in industry.
Okay.
Left the University of Texas at Austin, went to the research lab for an oil company outside of Denver.
Okay.
And that was a real good experience. But after about 9 or 10 years, I realized that oil company would no longer have the type of job I wanted in the place where I wanted to live, like outside of Denver. So I started looking to get back into academics. An opening came up at Michigan Tech, which is essentially on Lake Superior in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Nice, remote, heavily forested area, lots of outdoor activities. Seemed perfect. The winters are extreme. 300 inches of snow a year is typical.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's like Brian Head type of snow. And stayed there for 30 years. Every now and then I'd spend a year somewhere else. That happens in academia. Sometimes it's a sabbatical. Sometimes it's a seconded type of position. So for those, I spent one in Cambridge, England, working with Schlumberger, an oil field service company at their research center.
Okay.
And another year in Washington, D.C., working for the State Department and USAID. I used to have to spell out what that is, but I no longer have to because it's been in the news so much.
Now you know all about it.
Yeah.
Now everybody does. So you worked there for a little while, and then so how did you get to Southern Utah?
Oh, so what I like to say is every geoscientist knows and loves Southern Utah. You just look out there and the rocks tell you the story.
Yeah.
My wife is always jealous of me when we go on hikes because I see these stories and I try to explain them to her. See, there used to be a stream. This is where the cobbles came down and whatever, things like that. And this is how it folded and the stresses were this direction. Till her eyes glaze over. But geoscientists find it fascinating to have all that just laid out in front of you.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty amazing. And this is actually an episode, not a city council candidate, but having a geologist on to talk about this in Southern Utah and its uniqueness. We might have to save for another time.
Right.
Because I have like 7 million questions.
Okay.
And I could talk to you about that. But maybe in a little nutshell, you came here out of that curiosity?
Well, so here's the story. We had decided that we would stay in northern Michigan most of the year, but when the winters got too long, which would be like around February, you've already had 3 months of winter, and then let's go somewhere else. And first place we went was St. George. We never looked back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you've lived here for how long?
A little over 5 years.
A little over 5 years. And so help me understand what's kind of fired you up to get into politics after not really being were you active in other communities in
Well, I was the dean of engineering at the college in a college town. So that by itself, you don't want to do anything else. That's overpowering the town. So I did not do anything like that there. I was often active at in the Capitol in Washington, D.C., as president of that society, vice president of another. I could go and I'd have access to senators or congressmen or their staffs or people that were on the energy department. Committees, things like that, the committees. And that was really good. I felt like I was fairly efficient at that, fairly effective. And the door was always open. So when I came here, the first thing that I saw, though, I went to a couple of city council meetings just because in Ivins people are engaged and you know what's going on. And the Dry Wash Reservoir was being proposed. So I thought, well, I know about reservoirs. I used to live at the world's largest earth-filled one, and I'm a dean of engineering. I pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah.
let me see what's going on here. Could I have a copy of the environmental assessment? Could I have a copy of the geotechnical report? For a while, I didn't get any till I kept adding more names to the CC list. Then I started to get a response saying, okay, here's... And they sent me a copy of what they said was the environmental assessment. It wasn't. It was the geotechnical report.
And you were going to the city for this, or
the city and the district?
And the district. Okay.
Yeah. So the geotechnical report, most people, their eyes will glaze over reading that. I enjoy reading them. That's fine. So I read that. Then I got the environmental assessment. I read that. And then when I saw the city council acting on this, and of course they have their meeting, the populace, the residents, we can just sit there and watch. We can't interact.
Right.
I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw people who were completely ignorant of the environmental assessment. They approved a reservoir that was nowhere considered by any of those documents. Much larger than ever considered. Well, much larger than the one that was considered in the environmental assessment. And in fact, internally inconsistent. They wanted it to be a huge reservoir, 1,900 acre feet, and they wanted it to not cross Quavasa. You can't do that. Anything that size has to cross Quavasa. They would have known all this if they'd read the environmental assessment. So I was appalled at that. Then when the...
So let me take a step back. So the city council's presented this plan, and the expectation is, hey, read through this environmental and geological study, and then the Water Conservancy District or somebody is presenting what their plan is. So based off of this information, the environmental impact and the geological, this is the reservoir that we're presenting, or
you'd like it to be that way, but it wasn't.
Okay.
What it was the Water District for 20 years had been planning on the Lake Powell pipeline.
Right.
Then when it became a reality that it was unlikely to take place, or at least not soon, they said, what else can we do? Well, 20 years earlier, almost 20 years earlier, the agreement with Shivwitz had taken place between St. George and Shivwitz for, basically you can say that over the last century or two, we stole all their water. Okay. And so what are we going to do to make up for that? So the making up for that was to give them 2,000 acre feet of reuse water, processed wastewater per year. Okay, there's a pipeline then going to be built to go up to Shivwitz Reservation. Now, they don't have to have it all delivered there. They can sell it to other entities on the way. It doesn't have to go to the reservation. But they still needed a pipeline there because they had to guarantee that amount of water could be delivered. Since there's a pipeline...
And this was 20 years ago. This is like in
2004.
2004, okay.
Yeah. Well, the settlement might have been 2002 or something like that.
Okay.
2004 is when the reports were finished on this. So they said, okay, if that pipeline's going to go up essentially along Old 91 from the wastewater processing plant in Bloomington,
right,
which, by the way, does an excellent, really supremo job of processing the wastewater, removing all the biological hazards, not the chemical hazards. That's not part of the job, but the biological hazards are removed. So since that pipeline's going up, are there places where we could build reservoirs in order to store the water so the pipeline doesn't have to be huge, so that the processing facility could work, say, year-round, store the water, and then supply it
as needed.
As needed, right. So two places were found: Graveyard Wash, which is essentially, if you're driving up Old 91.
Across from the graveyard.
Probably, but there are multiple graveyards. The way I like to describe it, if you're looking to turn into Harmon's, look the other way. Of course, you'll have an accident then, but that's where Graveyard Wash will be.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one. And the other is Dry Wash. And that is if you're going up Old 91 and you're turning toward the Anasazi Trailhead, look the other way.
Yeah.
That's where Dry Wash would be. It's on the uphill side of Old 91.
Right.
Graveyard Wash be on the downhill side of Old 91. So those two reservoirs were proposed back in 2004. Okay. Geotechnical study, environmental assessment done at that point.
Okay.
Then it sat. The pipeline was built, but the proposal for using the reservoirs, no action was taken on that for the 16, 18 years in between. So in 2021, the water district realized they needed to do something because the Lake Powell pipeline was not forthcoming. And they said, okay, we need graveyard wash and we need dry wash. They came to the city council and said, you have to approve dry wash moving forward. They can sort of overrule some of the city council stuff, but not everything. So you have to approve this, and you have to do it fast because we have to get moving on this because the environmental assessment is going to expire soon. It only lasts 20 years. That's what they said. And they said, and if you don't do that...
This was in the meeting?
Yep. This was in the meeting. It's in the minutes. It's in a video. You can see it all. And they have said in a talk about that if we didn't approve it and the district had to start declining building permits, developers would sue the city. And Zach Renstrom himself would be called in as one of the first expert witnesses in the side of the developers. That's what they said. They were really playing hardball. So the city council felt like they were under a lot of pressure. In addition, the meetings were between an election and when the city council changed hands. So there were two lame duck city council members at that time. And what I saw happening was anger at the city. And we're going to do the most we can to get the biggest reservoir in spite of what anybody else wants. On the part of some of the city council members. I saw ignorance on all the parts of all the city council members. They had never looked at the environmental assessment. If they'd looked at it, they didn't read it. They didn't understand it. And I saw behavior on the part of the water district that I would not consider to be the highest standard. All of those threats that were made to the city. That's not the right way to behave in a thing like this. So a large reservoir was approved. So then the engineers were given the assignment, figure out this reservoir. And I said, hey, water district, I know some of this stuff. Why don't I take a look at this? They said, sure, take a look at this. Well, the engineers here, they'll show you what they're working on. They showed me what, and I looked at that and found, oh my gosh, this reservoir is going to have a footprint of 61 acres when it's full. But when it's at low water, and it's going to go up and down every year, when it's at low water, 47 of those acres is going to be exposed. Most of it as large area of mud flats on the western shore. Well, that's a lousy way to build a reservoir. You want a reservoir to be bathtub shaped. This reservoir was going to be steep on one side and just a slow prograding thing on the other side, so that there'd be this wasteland exposed every year for a few months. Of course, there'd be no vegetation. Wind would be picking up all the dust. And that dust would contain what? Not just sand. It would contain whatever precipitated out of the wastewater that had not been treated out, which means PFAS, arsenic, salts, things like that. At that point, then, several medical professionals got involved and said, wow, this is bad. We don't know for sure what PFAS does. We don't know for sure what the concentrations will be. They made some estimates. Other people made other estimates. The estimates varied by orders of magnitude. My takeaway is we don't know. But they got involved with that. Other medical experts came in, said, in that sediment that's already there is valley fever spores, and that'll be exposed and that'll be airborne after the vegetation's all gone and the wind can pick up that dust. Then the engineers went back and redesigned it a little bit, but they didn't really minimize that footprint. They made it bigger by making the reservoir 4 feet higher with the same footprint. They said, okay, we're just going to make it higher so there's more freeboard before you run into that mudflat stuff. But that 4 feet higher made it 4 feet higher than the highest competent rock that would hold back the reservoir to keep the abutment from failing. That was clearly stated in the geotechnical feasibility study in 2004, in the environmental assessment in 2004, in the borehole studies that were done since then, or at that time. And since then, the engineers did not propose any new borehole studies on that abutment. So it stands that the highest level that the reservoir could be was 4 feet lower than what they proposed then. So I've presented that to them. I had to do it publicly because at that time they were no longer talking to me.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
They were only talking when there was an audience of 300 people. So I had to present that at the city council with an audience of 50 or whatever it was.
Yeah, but it's public. It's on the record, right?
Yep.
And so they ended up tabling it.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yes.
And was it because of that?
Well, what they say it's because of, and I believe this is true. So let me back up. When I looked into this, I always said, I'm not really sure we need this reservoir here. Mm-hmm. When I look at the water demands of the community, I said, I don't think we need it. But if we're going to get one, let's make sure we get a good reservoir.
Yeah.
That was always my attitude. Some people hated me for it because it was a NIMBY thing. They did not want a reservoir there no matter what. And my attitude was, if we're going to have one, let's make it a good one.
Yeah.
So what the district said was, we hired outside experts to come and reevaluate our entire reuse system because they needed to. This was stuff that the county had never done. Mm-hmm. And there are experts in this that have worked on this around the world. They hired good experts on this. The experts' first thing they said was, what is the water demand up here? And they found that the water demand by the cities, Santa Clara and Ivins in particular, was much, much less than what was anticipated. Why? Because we're so dang good at conservation.
Yeah.
We don't use much water. And our plan is to even use less water per capita in the future. Mm-hmm. So those consultants said, you don't need this reservoir. Mm. So that's the reason that it was tabled.
Okay.
Yep.
So that would be the original idea, though, was to allow water to flow up to the Shivowitz reservation, though, right? So
the pipeline is still there. Graveyard Wash is likely to be able to meet all those needs.
Okay.
Basically, the high water users would be Shivowitz, the soccer fields, and mm-hmm. maybe something else that they might do, and Black Desert Resort.
A couple of dozen golf courses from what is proposed.
See what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's not get too in the weeds there.
Yeah.
I think this brings me kind of the first question I had. I appreciate you giving me the backstory and everybody else the backstory on that, because I know there's some perspectives, and this was my initial perspective, was like, we need as many reservoirs as we can. Everyone that we say no to seems like a missed opportunity. Right. And so that was my initial, gut feeling. But then again, even being an Ivins resident, I thought, well, somebody else has far more time to focus on this thing than I do. And so it's I'm going to trust the people that are tasked with doing the job to do the job right. And if they don't think that we should do it, then we probably shouldn't do it. Right.
Now, remember, this reservoir is not one that would be holding back a stream that's flowing with fresh water.
Right.
It would be filled with water piped up from the wastewater treatment facility.
Right.
So it's decent water, but I'm not sure you want the precipitate from that water to be airborne into our community.
Yeah, I think that's a key. And that was the first thing that I heard too. I was like, that does kind of make sense. And the wind does blow, and mm-hmm. you never know. And the worst thing you could do is we don't know, and then make a decision based off of I don't know. And especially from a governmental organization, that's a lot of risk that I don't think it's worth bearing, at least in my own perspective. So what if we were to take a macro look at local government, though, mm-hmm.
not
just specifically on the water, but what would you say is the proper role of the local city government? What is it? What's their job?
Well, the main job is to provide security and infrastructure to
mm-hmm.
the residents. Now, the survey that was done 3 years ago, mm-hmm. Made it clear that quality of life was also a high point of concern for the residents. And so that would be the third thing, to maintain a quality of life that the residents want to maintain.
And when I got that survey too, I was, the first thing that jumped out to me was, what does that mean, quality of life? Because what's quality of life to me might be different from you and somebody else. What's your perspective? What do you think that entails?
That's a pretty broad question, really. Yeah. But the main thing that the job of the city council, the city in general, would be to hear from the residents themselves what that means. Mm-hmm. So the survey went through that in some detail. Parks, beauty, maintaining the natural space. That's all good. Keep taxes low. Wait a minute. Now we've got a tension there.
Mm-hmm.
Dark skies, but light streets, whatever. There's tension everywhere mm-hmm. in all of those things having to do with quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So my view of quality of life is what I'd like, but I have to hear what everybody else wants
mm-hmm.
before that is a judgment for the city.
Yeah.
And the conversation that has to take place is not an easy one, of course.
Mm-hmm.
the city has been doing a really good job in maintaining those conversations. The survey was one big thing. The talkabouts are another. Occasionally there's a town hall, a third of the city, another third, meeting on certain subjects. And those are good. What I found, though, is that the hardest part is not having those forums, but making sure everybody knows about them. Mm-hmm. That is so weird. Because we don't have a local newspaper, nobody does.
Yep.
How do you get the words to the people?
Mm-hmm.
Well, social media, banners on Central Street, Snow Canyon Parkway, Old 91, emails, things like that. But still, in spite of all that, I can ask my neighbors, are you going to the talkabout tonight? They say, what? What are you talking about? Talk about tax? What taxes? Who said anything about taxes?
Yeah.
And that's hard.
That's hard. It really is hard. And I don't know if there's really a simple solution to it. I think there's certain things that are going to fire up a populace, but if things seem to be generally going well, a lot of people are going to just stay in their lane and keep their head down and keep running forward. And so that's why, I think municipal elections are so important is, every once in a while we have to pull our heads up out of our stream and look around and find out, okay, we need to make sure that the leaders who are supposed to be taking care of this while I'm doing my thing are qualified to do it. Yeah. And so, thinking about that relationship. So it seems like, from what I understand, is your interest level comes into, you feel like you could fill a need for a city council member that is qualified to be able to make some decisions based off what you've seen in the past, that city council members aren't taking enough of an active approach in leading the city. Is that kind of the perspective?
Right. Now, I should qualify that. The current city council is really good.
Okay.
And I think that's why so many people these days are staying in their own lane, not really paying that much attention. Mm-hmm. The city's being run pretty darn well. Mm-hmm.
Yet there's 7 candidates in Ivins.
I know.
Where in Washington City, it's like twice as big. They only have 3 city council people running for the 2 seats that are open, right? And so,
so they get to avoid primary. Lucky folks.
So they're lucky. Their mayor isn't even running opposed, so he's running unopposed. And so my thought is, okay, well, where is this coming out of, right? The number of candidates, where is this stemming from? So maybe take one more step back. How do you view the relationship between the city government, state government, and federal government? Do you see how do those individual governments organize, and how do you think they should operate? Are they operating correctly or the way they should at this point? Or
throw the county in there as well.
The county,
I think that they're not operating as well as they should.
Okay.
I think that both the state and the county wish that the municipalities didn't exist.
Okay.
They would really like to run these places themselves. So they're busy trying to tell us how we should do it, take away our ability to control our own destiny to some extent. Mm-hmm. And now our own representatives from this area are better than the state legislature writ large, in that they're sensitive to our requirements, but they are unable to sway the majority there.
Right.
So that's a problem. But I do think that the state micromanages the cities more than they should.
Is there an example maybe that you've come across?
Like color of houses. Mm-hmm. The city says, we overwhelmingly want to blend into the background because our vistas, our views, our scenery is one of the primary aspects of the beauty of Ivins. Mm-hmm. And the state says, you can't control that. Mm-hmm. And they write it in such a way that Quonset huts get put up in people's front yards. Mm-hmm. There's nothing we can do about some of those. I don't know the details, but that's how, and that's just wrong. They shouldn't be telling us that. If the city wants to say as a rule that we're going to try to blend in and not have something that stands out as a visual bright spot, we should be able to do that.
So that kind of comes into the, the argument. I think SB 151 is the recent bill that passed specifically identifying this rule. From what I understand, they're put into a position where the state at writ large, right? Most people in the state would say we have an affordable housing issue.
Okay.
And so and even as you read through the bill with this, it's with the focus on, hey, we want to be able to reduce regulations in order to help add supply and more affordable homes because the color is cheaper when you have a different color.
Color, who knows why?
Exactly. And
so,
so when I think about it, how would you? What's your perspective on how do we approach that issue with affordable housing, maybe in Ivins?
Well, one thing that they are doing is permitting accessory dwelling units, and that's good. So they've got regulations. You can't build something that looks like a barn and dwarfs your house. It's got to look like it's not quite your house, but close to it, and so on. And those regulations seem good from what I have seen and understood. Occasionally you get somebody whose lot configuration is such that it isn't quite amenable to that, and that's a rotten shame. And it would be nice if there were ways to deal with that. And I've seen the city council or the planning commission, it might have been, I'm not sure which, try hard to work with a person in that situation to figure out, is there some way we can do it? In that case, specifically, it got pointed out that they have setback requirements for how tall the building can be. And those setback requirements were, I'll make up the numbers now because I don't remember them.
I think it's a 15-degree angle from 5 foot. Is that not that?
But it's not. That's what it has to be. That's what it should be.
Okay, got it.
What it is at some distance, it's 5 feet lower. At another distance, it's 3 feet lower, whatever it is. But it should be a continuous slope.
Got it.
And so the poor guy had been trapped in a place where if he could have had the continuous slope, he could have done it. But instead, he was trapped at the 2 or 4 feet lower, whatever it was, because of the stepwise nature of the requirement. Well, the city council heard that and said, we'll do what we can to change this. Or the planning commission. Sorry, I don't remember what it was.
So thinking about like those setbacks and some of those regulations, is it your perspective though that those regulations are keeping affordable housing from coming into Ivins? Or do you think that there's some other function of Ivins that's making it difficult to have lower valued homes?
The biggest function is that the price of housing, the price of land is so high.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's turn this subject around a little bit to some recent examples.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a case recently where a proposal was made for rezoning. It would have required a change of the land use as well. And that was right near where the Dry Wash Reservoir was proposed, so I'm familiar with it, walked all over there. Again, across from the Anasazi Trailhead, essentially, on the uphill side of Old 91, but before you get to the steep bluff that goes up. Got it. Okay. So in that area, they were proposing to build duplexes that would fit the Kayenta concept. So they'd be low adobe-style stucco houses, blend into the background. There would be duplex of 2 units, and such things exist in Kayenta, although you have to look really hard to realize what they are because they look like the other types of houses. And there would be 4 of those per acre. That's a really good, slightly higher density approach. They're not townhomes and tall, they're not garish, but it's 8 units per acre on quarter-acre lots with 2 units in one building. Makes good sense. There were complications with that in that it would require the land use change from low density to high density. And when you do that, anything that's in the high density could be allowed. You couldn't turn it down. So people could say, oh, now I've changed my mind. I'm going to build townhomes in there and pack them in like crazy. And nobody wanted to approve that. The developer said, that's not what we're trying to do. We want to do this. But there's no guarantee that, they won't get hit by a bus and their heirs would take over and say, we want townhomes. Who knows? So how do you deal with that? Another problem is that some members of the city council, and I agree with them in concept, they don't want to keep doing this change of the land use plan one at a time. It should be looked at as a whole thing. Let's map it all out. Let's think about it. Let's have town meetings. Let's do this carefully and constructively as an entire unit. Instead of just every time that a developer says, I want this, we consider that one separately. Let's get a bigger plan. I agree. In this case, I think the plan was so good and so obvious that we shouldn't make them wait because the city council has been sitting on this for too long.
Mm-hmm.
Current city council is not the problem. Previous city councils were the problem. So those were two issues. The city staff came up with a point that nobody else had realized, which was brilliant. Basically, this land had sensitive lands, steep hills, and somehow the high density qualification has different requirements than low or medium density for how they treat the sensitive lands.
Mm-hmm.
So one could say, no, we would like you to come up with a development plan to tell us how you're going to deal with the sensitive plans, and we'll hold you to that development plan and your heirs and successors to that development plan. The developer basically said, sounds good to us.
Yeah, I think it's planned unit development.
Yeah, okay.
PUD, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really, really common in lots of other cities too. Yeah.
So that was essentially the solution. Took care of a number of problems. One issue came up from that because I spoke up at that. I think I was the only citizen who spoke up in favor of approving this. Mm-hmm. I'm now known in social media as in favor of multi-unit housing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so now you picture apartment buildings and things. No, I was talking about these little duplexes that'll look like
those are multi-units.
Yeah, on quarter-acre lots.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I definitely don't see that as high density. I would not qualify 8 units per acre as high density. Not even by any measure of it. But that it's understood. So you got the tag. So you spoke up, and what was your thought? It was just in favor of doing some kind of a planned unit?
No, that had not been brought up at that point.
Oh, okay.
It was in favor of not forcing the developers to wait for the city council to do an entire new land use plan, but to approve this because it's so obviously consistent with whatever the city council would come up with.
Yeah, that
was what I spoke up with. Then later, as the conversation goes, it's no longer a public hearing. I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, gritting my teeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a tough thing, especially doing a general land use plan, because there's typically two. For those who don't know, is you have a general land use, and then you have individual zoning underneath that overlays, as it will. They typically get changed, right? There's the specific zone requirements, then there's the general land use strategy. And I think we're at a time where things could be a little bit more amiable as we progress. It does make for more work of individual parcels getting what can go here and what can go here. Yeah. And it's a tough thing to do, to project out 20 years or 30 years.
Oh,
yeah.
Boy,
it's tough.
Yeah. So talking about trying to figure out what goes where and working with developers, I want to bring up 2 SITLA examples. Okay. Of course, everybody now, their teeth are gritting when I mention SITLA. Yeah. But the 2 examples, the one where they're putting in the short-term rentals, the horizontal hotel west of Black Desert, but abutting an existing neighborhood that looks nothing like that. They forced that through. They threatened that if that didn't go through, it could be a gravel pit or something like that, and that they say, we can get away with it. Yeah, they can. I think that's wrong, but they can. The other example of SITLA is the affordable housing development that they are proposing, or that they have requests for proposals, and I think those are already under review now, near the Anasazi Trailhead, that area. That's a ridiculous place for that. Where should we be putting housing that is, in any sense, affordable? Say where our firemen or policemen or other staff like that might be able to live and raise a family. Out in the wasteland on the wrong side of Old 91, away from parks, away from public transit, away from any place where you can buy groceries. No, it should be close to that sort of stuff. There's a lot of agricultural land inside older Ivins that would be perfect for that sort of thing. So is there a way that we can sit down with SITLA and say, I know you're under pressure from the state to force affordable housing. You're under pressure from the state to produce income. But just because you've got this parcel and you've got that parcel doesn't mean those are the places that should each be doing this. And I think they got it backwards as to which one's doing what. But there are other developers. Can we talk about land swaps so that the whole thing works better and get the developers engaged? Now, that might be part of why the city, I don't know, but it might be part of why the city's talking about trying to hire a city planner in the future. It's not in the budget now.
Right.
I know that a number of them wish it were, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the sort of thing a city planner could do.
Mm-hmm.
But in the absence of a city planner, let's get that conversation going.
Yeah.
Because there may well be people that would be happy to have their land developed in a way that looks nice, where families can be raised, where people can take care of their elderly parents, whatever can be there, but they can walk to the grocery store.
I don't think you're wrong, and I actually hadn't even thought about that. Is the SITLA property there behind Padre Canyon, and those two developments? Looking at them from that lens of what's the best, not always the highest, but what's the best use of the land, right? And maybe there's something in the middle there that can be done. And the SITLA has a mandate, and they don't have really anybody to answer to. So they're going to do what they want, and they get to do it with the argument that we're providing income for kids in schools, which they do. And so it's a tough battle to wage, but it sounds like you're up for it. Like you're up for it.
Ready to have that fight.
Okay. I know we've gone a little bit long. I do want to understand. I know there's conversation about raising taxes in Ivins. So this is kind of along those lines. Is how do you choose between preserving cultural heritage in the community and fostering innovation in the city? And how do you prioritize them? Thinking of economics, if I was fostering innovation, meaning more economic development, and weighing out these two things, how do you propose, especially in Ivins, to how to balance these things? And are you in favor of the tax increase? Or do you see that there's an adjustment that could be made otherwise to help continue to have the city provide, services, safety services, and maintain that quality of life, which is what Ivins is wanting? Yeah.
So really, you almost asked two separate questions there, but let me deal with it.
I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, with the tax part specifically. It's almost a misnomer, not quite, to call it a tax increase. It is a tax increase in dollars, but not in inflation-adjusted dollars.
Okay.
For the past 15 years, and I in my calculations, I used a house of a value of $600,000 current value, because that's the median value for a house in greater St. George in the metropolitan area. Sounds like a lot, but that's what it is. So $600,000 house currently is paying $300 a year tax to the city of Ivins. It's only 13% of the entire property tax bill. 300 is the only part that goes to the city of Ivins. What did they pay 15 years ago? $300. So out of their pocket, $300 15 years ago, $300 now. Man, that tax has been going down because of inflation. And that's not just inflation. That's not inflation in the house value. That would be tremendous, because our houses here have all been skyrocketing. It's compared to the consumer price index, for example.
Yeah, the purchasing power of the dollar.
The purchasing power. So the purchasing power that I, as an owner of a house, might have gained over the past 15 years because of the inflation effect on the taxes, the lack of tax increase, that's reflected directly in the purchasing power that the city has lost from those taxes that they acquire. So it's not because the city's grown that they need to increase the taxes on individual households. They look at the overall budget. It's grown, of course, but the new houses, they pay their fair share too. They pay impact fees for those things, and they pay the $300 if it's a $600,000 house. So our tax increase is called that just because the state makes us call it that and makes us go through this agonizing process of truth in taxation. Most other states, they can index it to the consumer price index or something like that, and just each year keep inflating it slightly to keep up with inflation. Some places it'll go up if your house value goes up, and that can be horrendous, because a lot of places the housing value goes up to where they can't pay the taxes anymore.
Right.
The grandma's house, I can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's not the case here, but it's gone too far the other way, to where the taxes are held at a constant dollar value unless we go through this agonizing process. So what the city is actually proposing, let's take Mike Scott's proposal, is to just simply return to a value that we were paying in, say, 2018, the purchasing power of a few years ago. I'm suggesting we return back to the power of 2020. The difference in that for a $600,000 house is only like $25 a year, so it's almost negligible. So we could take Mike's value or my value. It's pretty much the same thing. But if we look at it, in my view, in an honest way, we're just going back to the taxes that we paid prior to the burst of inflation. During that burst of inflation in the early 2020s, the city was able to avoid tax increases because of two things that happened. One was the COVID relief funds that came in.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city spent all that. And the other is that for years they would take the bonds, performance bonds paid by developers. They would get that money back when they finished and they didn't, blow up the wastewater treatment plant or whatever that's against. They would get that back eventually. But in the meantime, the city was putting it into CDs.
Mm-hmm.
Interest rates were going up. So the city was making a lot of money. The state now says you can't do that anymore.
Okay.
So suddenly those two pieces of income that kept us from raising taxes for the past 5 years are gone.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to keep our fire service, our police service, and our roads from falling apart and a few things like that, we need to bring the taxes back to what they were a few years ago.
Would you think, though, that there's another function here that most of the cities have had to lean into, which is generating revenue through economic development?
Okay. So
I guess that's why I tagged the two together, right?
I see your point there. So the economic development that the city can do, we made the decision decades ago. Mm-hmm. As time went on, there's no big box stores. There's no vertical office buildings, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we're an attractive geographic location for that stuff anyway, but the decision was made to not have them. Okay, so that's not here. The only commercial stuff that was invited, you might say, was resorts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we maybe be careful what you ask for, but we've got them.
Yep.
And we're getting them. So what else could we attract? Well, maybe another restaurant or two, I don't know, have to compete with Black Desert eventually. I don't know how that would go. Sporting goods store, an ice cream shop, compete with the icebox, but that sort of thing. And maybe they could be in little commercial areas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the city had thought that's what could happen several years ago, and that was part of the land use plan at that time. They had little pockets of commercial areas. And I guess they expected that those would just happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't. And again, maybe that's where a city planner comes in. But I think that it's the role of the city to get together with developers, with the community, and say, would we like to make this here? Now, they tried to in the area between Vista School and the medical college.
Mm-hmm.
And the proposals there all sort of fell flat because they were multi-story buildings. They would cause traffic. It seemed nothing ever worked out to where the residents said, yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that on a smaller scale, little pockets like that could still work if there was coordination and encouragement of it. Instead of just saying, we've got these things, who wants to come in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would take some more coordination from your perspective.
Yeah. But I think that's the only source we've really got for diversifying our income. We really have to hope that Black Desert Resort is two things: successful so that it brings in the money, and that they live up to what they promise about how little effect that'll have on traffic and other things.
Yeah. And that's a tough one to think about, especially if we take it back to the SITLA conversation and say, okay, well, if SITLA turns those units into a higher density short-term rental, it would encourage and keep visitors at Black Desert and participating in Ivins economy versus them staying maybe not at Black Desert because they don't have a place to stay. So they end up staying in St. George and using their services and their restaurants and those types of things, and not necessarily using Black Desert as much as we would hope that it drives, right? Because I think that sales revenue is a big indicator on that. And that part of that development might be the make or break for some of that shopping and some of that sales tax that might be brought in. So it's a tough balance, right? As you're trying to figure out how do we make sure Black Desert is a success and also keep that quality alive. And it's tough to do.
It is.
Well, aside from these elements, is there anything that you want to leave a voter with on what your platform is? What do you believe? What's your strategy moving forward? Just as we kind of wrap up.
Well, I guess my strategy moving forward is, I think we need to pay attention to the details and be well versed in the subjects when they come up.
Yeah.
And that's where I would try to do my best.
Yeah. I think you're a smart guy. I think you're going to put the effort into it. Yeah,
Thank you.
It sounds good. Where can they find out more information about you?
So I have a website, WayneForIvins.com. The 4 is the number 4, WayneForIvins.com.
Okay.
And I've got some background stuff there. I've got some blogs. Right now there's just one about taxation because that was an important issue. I'll be adding something about water soon and then something about infrastructure as I can.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, well, just as I've said in every other episode, if this is the first one you've listened to, go to votestg.com. You can find all of the candidates there for Ivins, Santa Clara, St. George, Washington, Hurricane. All the candidates are there. All the interviews that I've conducted are there. We did surveys and sent them out to each one of them, so you can find it right there. It's votestg.com. Check it out. And WayneForIvins.com.
That's right.
The number 4 to learn more about Wayne. And good luck, man.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this.
All right. Thank you. Get out the vote, guys. We'll see you out there. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.